So we're now in Ybor City, which is the kind of industrial sort of old heart of Tampa. It used to be part of the cigar industry, and we're here at SOFWERX, which is an unclassified space. So there are lots of spaces like this across the kind of defense industrial base of lots of countries. You'd see this sort of stuff in a special forces base or even in a garage in Ukraine. But what they're doing here is in an unclassified environment, bringing in companies, but not just companies, also students, to work through some of the kind of problem set that works into the defense industry in general and the special operations community in particular. So behind us, we've got a whole bunch of kind of computer-aided design programs. I mean, some of this stuff was around 30 years ago when I was going through school, but the stuff that they also do here, which definitely didn't exist when I was at school, is a lot cooler. So if you look just over here, so pan down behind me here, I've got bring it back against this wall just behind me, just move around. That's fine. So those are 3D printers. So completely revolutionizing how defense, not just in the US, but elsewhere, is doing stuff. These stuff can be deployed forward. It can be deployed at relatively small engineering detachments. To give you an idea of what you can do with this kind of thing, I was at an event last year on the record where senior Pentagon official in the Department of the Navy was talking about a ballistic missile submarine, so an Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine that couldn't get back in the water because it had a missing part. And they weren't able to fix it for months on end until they got a US Marine Corps 3D printing detachment to build the thing they wanted, which fit into the slot on the submarine. Unsurprisingly, they weren't advertising where this was. And that got them a ballistic missile submarine back in the water. So firstly, Leslie, do you want to say a bit about your background? You're a current or serving Air Force colonel?
Yes, I'm retired military. I did 26 years of active duty, primarily in Air Force Special Operations Command as an MC-130 pilot. I flew the E and the H model, both of which are on sticks in the museums right now. So they've been retired, and the fleet's been fully replaced with the J model. I retired out of the SOCOM headquarters in 2018, and I was part of the J8 shop, which did a lot of the resourcing and programming and helping develop the budget for the command.
So I mean, you've dealt with all this stuff at the highly classified sort of fast-changing end, where technology over 25 years, what you had in a C-130, even before you replaced the plane with something that's more sort of fly by wire, everything changed quite heavily. Do you want to talk about how fast that pace of change has been and how that's accelerated in the last sort of 7 or 8 years?
Yeah, I think I can compare it to just when I was on active duty and we had software upgrades just in the mission computers and systems for the C-130. We might get those upgrades every 6 months to a year. So you're flying around with a known software defect. But now it's changing because there's those operating systems that are, we can help upgrade software more quickly. And just the fact that we've got 3D printing and the ability to prototype things and iterate very, very quickly. And just the advances of technology have been phenomenal in terms of, you start hearing about a technology, drones, 5-6 years ago were kind of a unique thing. But now the amount of payloads and platforms and sensors that are available have just exploded.
So, I mean, you guys do some work with school-age kids. Mm-hmm. Clearly, no one can be an expert at everything in these days, whether they're a SOF operator, and SOF operators have their own barriers to entry of passing their physical selection courses. So, if you're going to be a US Ranger, that's not easy before you start to look at what's actually in someone's head and their skill set. Talk me through how that sort of balance works now, where you can't possibly understand everything, and yet, as a pilot, you still need to understand everything on the airplane up to a point.
So in general understanding, you can't understand everything. I have a great staff here, full of engineers and experts in areas that I am not, that's not my forte. And so you have to be able to surround yourself with people that have those skill sets and be able to integrate all of that knowledge into really a team effort. And part of that is getting people interested in these different areas. Like naturally, people are very naturally curious, a lot of them, and they just kind of gravitate towards something that interests them that's outside of what they're already doing. So I see a lot of that as well in the military. So you'll have airmen or soldiers that outside of their additional duty become very interested in coding or 3D printing. And so you'll see them actually create solutions on their own for the problems that they're having.
Yeah, I was going to ask, of the companies that come to you, how many sort of have that veteran sort of problem solver at their heart, and how many have come in from tech?
I would say at least a third of them are either founded by military or have actually incorporated a veteran on their staff so that they have a better understanding of the military.
But that's 2/3 who don't, so they really do need to be helped through the process, presumably.
That is correct. And then even those that have military experience on their staff, they weren't necessarily part of the acquisition system, so they might not have necessarily understood, like, okay, I've got an idea, I develop a prototype, I need to now engage with the customer, but what is that acquisition pathway afterwards to get actually produced and fielded to the warfighter?
So, I mean, talk me through the process. If someone isn't connected to the military, they think they've got a solution to a problem they've maybe read about, maybe they've seen some news on Ukraine and go, I could do that differently using something that's new. What's the sort of process?
So for SOCOM in particular, because that is our government partner, they have a couple of front doors that folks can engage with, and obviously SOFWERX is one of them. So for us, really there's two ways, primary ways for companies to engage. We work with our SOCOM partner, and we will publish problem statements to our ecosystem. And again, if somebody has a solution that is relevant, we do unclassified work, and so everybody has the opportunity to see what that problem set is and to push their capabilities in. And that goes to commercial companies, academic institutions, labs, et cetera.
And talking about the other sort of the pitching new stuff, because you have a thing called Tech Tuesday, right?
Yep, and you hit the nail on the head. The other way is if your technology doesn't necessarily fall into the wheelhouse of one of those problem sets, they can apply to pitch at our Tech Tuesday. It's a virtual pitch. We do that intentionally because we know a lot of small businesses can't necessarily make the trip out to SOCOM to pitch in person, so it kind of levels the playing field from a financial perspective. And they get a 10-minute pitch, 5-minute Q&A, so we can dive a little deeper into their tech and help them understand maybe who the right customer in SOCOM is. And if we discover along the way that it's not necessarily a SOC peculiar thing, because sometimes it's hard to tell, we'll try and drive them in the right direction for other customers.
Talk about the sort of effect the Ukraine war has had. You started here before the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war's been through several stages. Just talk me through what that sort of has been like from your perspective.
Iteration, right? Making something, taking it out on the battlefield, does it work, does it not work? What didn't work about it, come back and iterate again. There's always new threats popping up, so I think the ability to see an emerging threat and then quickly iterate to counter that emerging threat is what we've really seen in terms of Ukraine.
Give me an idea of the sort of number of projects that you guys deal with. So, how much stuff, say, came to you last year that's now doing stuff in Ukraine or the Gulf? We talking dozens, hundreds, thousands?
I will tell you, outside of what we prototype, the follow-on use of those capabilities we're not necessarily privy to it, because again, we're doing unclassified stuff. We fully expect that some of the stuff that's developed here is going to be put into a classified use case or data, so we're not necessarily tracking all of them. I know we've had a couple of companies that have definitely won large government contracts here in the United States.
From initially just pitching to you guys? From
pitching and doing a project through us, developing that prototype or engineering sample, and then having that a follow-on government contract awarded.
Obviously Russia is a threat, but the peer threat is China. Do you get the impression the Chinese are adopting a similarly entrepreneurial sort of manner? This is in some ways this and other places like it is where America is trying to maintain its technical edge. How do you feel about, tell me how you sort of think about that battle as someone who is in the unclassified edge here, but trying to tap into that entrepreneurship and then get it into the services.
I guess I think of China versus US as a very different culture, right? And so I think in the US, you do things because you're driven by having to do them. I think sometimes in China, they're driven by being told to do them. And so that entrepreneurial mindset, I think, is more forthcoming in the United States. And I think we just have to enable that to move more quickly.